Here's a HT60 or HT3B that I machined for the O-ring. The bearing housing is not machined, the compressor housing is. It can be done either way, and I've done it either way before. I left 10 thousandths compression, so that this is 135 thousandths. This is 125 deep on the groove. And then it also will compress on the sides too. Here's a HT3B that I'm working on, or HT60. I'm not sure which one this is. I know the settings on the balancer are the same for HT3B and HT60, and the rebuild kits I think are the same thing. This is a pretty big turbo. Here's a BMW compressor wheel. That's an upgrade. You can see how small it is in comparison. On this HT3B, I also machined this compressor housing for the O-ring rather than doing the bearing housing. Either way could be machined. I could have done the bearing housing machine work for the O-ring and then left the compressor housing. But it was just easier to do the compressor housing because the cartridge was already together. So that's what I chose to do. On the turbine housing, there's some cracking. So I have a little bit of concern with that. And it looks like we got a raised edge right here. Then if you look inside here, it almost looks like a firewood pattern where it's just cracking all to pieces. And there's not really much I could do about that besides just say something about it and just tell them. I looked at the date on this. It looked like this was dated 2022. So for the amount of time, maybe 3 years or whatever. I know they put a lot of miles on these trucks, but I just didn't really think that it would crack as much as it did already. That's why I do a lot of work with just deburring turbine housings, just to make sure that this isn't going to happen. But I can't never really ensure that it won't happen. I can just try to prevent it. Where it always cracks is on hot spots and on really sharp corners. That's where you'll get the cracks. On the gasket surface here, what I would have done if it was a new one is just round all these edges and file them so that there's a smoother transition, so it would be less likely to crack there. I just laid this in here so you can get a better view of this turbo. What I did here is I just machined this. The whole purpose of that was so I could grab it right here to machine it for that O-ring on the compressor housing. This turbo sucked in something and just beat up the compressor wheel really bad, so we had to replace it. And then we had to machine the housing a little bit just to make this compressor wheel work. To wrap up what I did with this turbo, we replaced the compressor wheel, rebalanced the assembly, machined the compressor housing for an O-ring, and then blasted up all the parts, cleaned them really good with carb cleaner, then painted them. And then on the turbine housing, the next thing that needs to be done with that is either be replaced, put on the mill to be surfaced, and then all the edges rounded so that it will be less likely to get cracks even worse than what it's already got. I don't think I can, of course I can't fix what's already there, but I could try to help it last a little bit longer. But really there isn't a whole lot I could do to try to get this thing up and going as fast as possible. I may as well just build it the way it is because I don't have a way to get a housing right now. And this guy really needs to get back on the road.